Let me start with some PowerPoint, and even if Cecile said, you know, wait for the questions till later. If there's anything you want to sort of shout out and you simply you can't wait, then just do that, because I'm used to that.
Yeah, open the floodgates, Kuno.
Anyway, QualiWare 10.6. Some of these we talked about already last year as part of 10.5, and as I just said, we decided to split the 10.5 into a server architecture release that was released just before New Year, and there's been a couple of patches on top of that, included SCIM login mechanism, so that in cloud you can run your own Azure AD and push your organization into the cloud environment, so that if you remove, or if somebody leaves your company and you remove that from your own AD, their access to the cloud will immediately be terminated in QualiWare as well. So, but now 10.6 has some new features that that are quite sort of vital, but also relatively innovative, I think. First of all, when it says the new dashboard feature, it has to do with a new user interface when you're looking at a diagram. So we basically got a little tired of, and we also, to be frank, got a little criticism from Gartner on the traditional tab-oriented structure in the web when you're looking at a diagram. So when you look at a diagram, you have these 10, 15 tabs on top of it where you can run different types of analysis. And that was a little not flexible enough, basically. So we are introducing a new and a whole new user interface on that part. And we've tried that and tested it with selected consultants, and they really like that. Another feature that we are building more into is the 3D visualization. First of all, we are expanding our flexibility on the current 3D visualization. So instead of getting that whole solar system that you're familiar with everything in there, you can now filter the relationship. So you can say, I want to visualize, but I want to visualize with respect to responsibility or digitalization or compliance. So you can have different types of focus on the visualization and not include all objects, but just the objects that relates to that specific domain. So that is quite a powerful extra feature in the 3D visualization. Another thing that we built is the ability to visualize connected diagrams. So instead of visualizing 3D objects with relationships, we're basically visualizing floating diagrams in the air. So you can say, oh, here's my main diagram, and then I can visualize everything that this breaks down to, or that it's connected to in either end, and things like that. So a little bit more domain-specific visualization of a set of objects, like 10, 15 diagrams that are connected, and you want to see that all in one visualization. And that is something that we're waiting to show you guys. It's actually got quite a good review from our reviewers, and it also allows you to show that subset of the business architecture that you wish to focus on. You can of course not change it, but it allows you to bring that out into the open, and also it allows you to save that and basically print that as a PNG file or something, and move it into another diagram if you want to. The last thing on visualization is the ability to do clustering analysis. And the clustering analysis is a mathematical algorithmic approach to organizing and grouping objects that belong together. And how do we know how they belong? Well, there is a mathematical distance or affinity measurement where the closer they are put together, these objects, the bigger the chances that they belong to the same cluster. And then you can say, so what do you mean putting objects close together? Is it sort of the geography of it? No, it's not. This is a definition of closeness that can be changed. So right now, number of relationships are sort of out of the box distance measure. So the more relationships that are between objects, the higher the chances that they belong to the same cluster. So you could say, in theory, if you cluster your entire repository, you should end up having a sales cluster, a procurement cluster, an HR cluster, a manufacturing cluster, and so on and so forth. So you would hope that they would cluster together in something that makes sense from a business knowledge point of view. Now, if you're missing the HR cluster, then it may be because you didn't model that, or you didn't model enough to make it its own cluster, and then you have to drill into a lower level of clusters to find the HR area. Now, it is not the idea that we want to reproduce your organizational diagram with a new smart mathematical analysis. The idea is to take chaos data and make sense of it. So if you have a spreadsheet that you're importing, or if you have used the tags, you can hashtag any object in QualiWare, and then you can have a folder that assembles all the objects that belong to the same tag. Now, if you've done that, there are no sort of predefined relationships necessarily between all those objects in the same folder. But if you cluster that folder, you will get a logical groups of belonging objects to make it easier for you to model your business going into the future. A classical business architecture example of clustering is you want to transform your business. You have 2,000 applications and 855 processes and some information, and then you want to define your transformation projects, and you may want to include the relevant subset of your improvement in the same project. And if you cluster your business model, you will actually, especially if you combine that with your capability model, you will get suggestions for well-formed and sort of scoped transformation projects. And this is something that we are excited to work with in the future. We are looking at more and more underlying features in the tool to help you organize and understand chaotic and large amount of data, and clustering analysis is certainly a way forward on that. Then we are expanding the query design. The query designer has become enormously popular in QualiWare. It basically allows you to draw a model that shows the objects and relationships that you want to follow. Basically, draw a subset of the graph structure of the data, and then generate a query that can be reused in multiple different places, in QRVs, spreadsheets, reports, what have you. That query design was expanded last year with the notion of composite model. So basically a QSQL model at the bottom that extracts a subset of the data from the repository, and then multiple layers on top of that with composite queries that could calculate, aggregate, or basically run a lot of data and statistics analysis on top of your data. Now, we want to combine that analysis that sits in the QualiWare toolset with queries that goes out of the QualiWare toolset. And last year, we introduced the ability to reverse engineer a database structure into a relational diagram. Now, what we're introducing now is the ability to use that relational diagram to generate actual SQL queries with the query designer. So instead of creating the relationships or following the relationships in the hyperlinks and the graphical relationships in QualiWare, it will follow your foreign keys in your relational diagram. And that means that you can basically sit in QualiWare and use the same capability to design queries that extract data from your external databases, so BI systems, data warehouses, wherever you need to have data externalized and internalized and linked to the QualiWare models. So quite an interesting approach, and the more we work with this, we can see that the query design becomes more and more easy for people configuring the toolset in order to extract the exact amount of data and get the right result back. Last thing, the Repository Explorer, where it says here optimized for large data set. That is actually already implemented in 10.5, so it could be a different thing here. But what I want to say is that if those of you who are familiar with the QualiWare Repository Explorer, you know that you can browse your objects and relationships in the tree structure. In the web, you only have the folders and the templates. So as soon as you get objects there in the center, list view part of the Repository Explorer. Now we are expanding that so you can browse objects and relationships in the tree view. I don't know if that's going to be, enormously important to you. It's just we want consistency, and people are happy with that. Also, we want to introduce some sort of use by the little tree view you see in QLM at the bottom of the Repository Explorer that shows if you select an object, where's this object used. That is something we want to include again, both in the Repository Explorer and even in the Ask list. Another thing that has to do with seeing a list of objects is a tree list that we are implementing in the revision management and in the approve and promote feature, so that you are more able to fold out sub hierarchies and highlight what is it that I want to promote. Right now we're using just maybe a little too sort of simple approach to this. If you ask me, we are either using including everything on the diagram or maybe something else. So but right now with this new you could say ask tree list, if you wish. It's not an ask list, but a little bit more advanced. It's easier for people to define exactly what is it that I want to approve. And then there are meta model expansions, and these are not the only ones, but these are the ones I'm we're going to touch upon: the cloud architecture model, the web ontology language meta model, and the API architecture. And let's take a look at that. I want to skip this because we've seen that before, but Amazon, Google, and Microsoft has specific models, diagram types or simple types that that their clients can use to model the architecture of the cloud solution that they have, and we'll provide support for those palettes in the 10.6 release. Ontologies are sort of a very high level sort of platform independent layer of a information structure, and it plays a vital role, or can play a vital role in an integration situation where you have APIs linked to your application landscapes and your applications. Of course, those APIs represent a platform dependent structure of information and services. So if you have an API for a system, it represents the way information is structured in that system, and the same for another system. And that is actually what often makes it complicated to integrate two systems, different types of representations of data and different meanings. The ontology language here is a platform independent layer, and as such there are actually quite a number of industry specific ontologies with a specific domain. So here we have a time ontology, and just imagine how many of your systems that actually integrate dates and time across different platform specific implementations. Now, if all of them implemented a time independent layer, so that everybody knew that this is how we represent time no matter where we integrate from, that would make it possible to integrate easier a number of systems. So that is a type of model that is, I think, here to stay. It's not a new thing, it's just a new thing in QualiWare, but it becomes more and more important as we talk about the API integration, and that of course brings us to that API architecture. And the API architecture we placed under the application landscape, and I'm going to show it in just a moment to take you through that full implementation. So for example, if you have an information flow between two applications, how are they communicating? Well, we can have integration views between those two. We can make that data mapping. That's something we can do already today. So if customer is represented in the first system as customer ID, customer name, blah, 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 and in the target system as client and client number and client name, then the mapping of data from the source to the target needs to be specified. So we can see here, customer ID becomes client number, and the postal address, zip code, and customer city is concatenated into client address in the target system, and type is not even updated. So that ability to, even at a very low level, specify how do we move data from this system to this system, and how do we map it. Now, with the API focus that we're seeing now more and more with our clients, also a specific standard for APIs have emerged. It used to be called Swagger files. Now it's called OpenAPI. So there's a consortium, and I'm using this just to show you the meta model for the OpenAPI file. So it's quite complicated stuff here. We're talking about a file that defines all the data structures, parameters, and services of an API into a system. So this is the meta model for that. And we're going to take a look at how are we going to handle that in just a short while. So no, thank you yet. But let me show you. Something here. I have a new repository here. TV Kitchen. There will be a button for that, of course. Let me import that OpenAPI stuff. Where did I go here? OpenAPI, there's repositories. So we'll just import something here. Now we got something in here. And I will. The OpenAPI establishes an object that is called doc.root. Here's the doc.root. No, well, let me find the right file to import here. I thought I had that. Sorry about that. No. Where did I put that? I just did this. JSON files. Here are some OpenAPI files. These are defined for an application, real estate core. So it basically reads that JSON file and it imports it, and it will give you that doc.root. That doc.root object here, real estate core. So the doc.root is the root of the JSON documentation for that API. And if I open that up, it has a list of what is known as paths. Basically, you could say areas that would be in this case a real estate API. So there would be a building section that has to do with reading and writing into building information. And if I click get, this is everything I can do on the has building component. There's a string filter. I basically open up the different API parameters and services and return codes that is part of this specific API. So this API represents an interface opportunity into a specific application. Now, if we go to the web, that's somewhere here. Here's my web. Go to application management. Let's take a look at how that is represented now in the web. So we just saw that in QLM. In the web, it looks a little different, also a little nicer. So I have an integration between these two specific applications. It's represented on this specific diagram. And I can open up and look at the interface supporting this specific, and I can see that real estate core module. Now, what we've done is to include a specific user interface on the API. So here you're seeing exactly what you saw before. You know, here you can see the building here and building component. These are the paths for this specific API, and then we can see all the services: get building entities, create a new building, get a specific building, update an existing building. So basically, stuff that you can find in the API. If I click that, I will see the actual documentation of the API. So has building component, it's a string, and so on and so forth. This is basically how the API is defined. So if you're a developer and you want to request stuff on a building, these are the operations that you can call, and there are some parameters that you would need to update. And over here on the right side, we've included a coding environment where you can get help with the code that you want to send to this specific API. So if you click here, there are coding environments that allows you to, JavaScript, or I want to use, for example, let's do a C# REST API script. Well, here's your code to access that specific operation in that specific interface, in that specific path. So we're helping people not just documenting and analyzing their API, but also writing code. If you want to do that with, let's do this as a Python request, you get suggestion. So little code snippets that you can use in order to establish that working API. Now, of course, QualiWare does not run any type of automatic transformation or transfer of data between objects. We're only handling the descriptive part of this, but you can actually get code out of this, and it gets you this particular nice way of looking at the API just by pointing to the JSON file. So that is quite nice. And then, of course, you can use all the different type of analysis that you have. Here we could see we came from this mobile passenger platform with this interface, and here are all the different things. And if I want to see where did I use my building interface, that will be available as an analysis. If you have used this in multiple systems, you will get this information right out of your EA tool. And that is exactly what the Danish tax were looking for. I mean, they have these thousands of applications, and they basically don't know what system is using what information. They don't have that documented well. And with this, they can get that documentation up and running quite easily. So that is how we are looking at the API. We've integrated it into the normal version, and basically expect you to just add that as sort of endpoint definitions for your application landscapes. And then the last thing, we talked about those ontologies, and we saw the time ontology before. Here's the friend of a friend ontology, Rami 4, not very interesting. Real estate core. Here's the real estate core ontology. So if you have the real estate API in one of your systems, then of course you should link that into the core, or consider that real estate core. And these are public domain type of ontologies. So this is something you can go out and you can find it. You know, your industry organization may have done this already. I know that in Denmark, the government built that sort of data distributor a couple of years ago, and that was actually what they did, was to say, okay, this is how you can get data from the Danish government system. So if you want to have a you know, GIS type of information, you know, routing and any type of geography information, then you can ask the public system this way, and the data distributor would give you that data right back if you ask the right way. So there's a nice set of standard, more than we have here, and there may be ontologies out there that we don't even know of, but it's certainly something that, you know, what is an event, has an observation type, has a point in time, has a start time, has a read time, has created time. You know, a lot of stuff in there that is important to look at when you want to work with integration. And so that's how it is. But it's certainly something that has generated a lot of, at least, internal interest in the way that it's much easier to understand. It's much more personalized. If you want to save your tiles and move them around a bit, so it's easier for you, save them onto your personal objects. So next time you log in, you have your own setup for the way that you work with your diagrams. And I think that is something that is a little bit easier to work with. Yeah. So that was all I had to say about API. Now the good thing is that it will, when we release this, all be able to generate the API. So if you don't have an API for your system and you're building that, you can generate the OpenAPI file from QLM as well, or from QualiWare as well. Okay, so that was pretty much it. Now, any questions?
We've built it up so much, there better be.
I saw you had a life cycle up there on your last show life cycle, yes, no. That's a new feature that you can say, yes, show me, and you're looking at properties, it would show you which ones are life cycled.
Yeah, there is a life cycle on all assets in the tool.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, so there is a life cycle on all IT assets, so applications, of course, but also on components and infrastructure components. They all have life cycle, and of course, you can say, well, we have these 6 different parts in the life cycle. Let me, you know, if I open up the.
It was more on the left that I was seeing that life cycle. That doesn't.
So you noticed that, right? It's been there for a while, actually. So if you go to the life cycle part, so when did we start investigating this system? When did we start implementing it? When did it go into production the first time? Did we freeze it? When did it start phase out, and when was it phase out, and what life cycle is it in right now? And even if there's a waiver, now we knew we were supposed to close it down, but we didn't do it anyway, and who granted that waiver, and what's the motivation behind the waiver? So that whole management of systems. But then you're absolutely right. There is this show life cycle, yes, no. So if I switch it on, it will show the life cycle state. Now we are taking the it's not in 10.6, but we are taking the generation. This is in 10.6, of course. It's actually in the one you have already now. That little thing out there is out of the box, so it's in your system right now. But what I wanted to say was, we are going to create a layered view on highlighting. Because what we have right now in QLM is we have these bottom panels, for example. You can switch them on and off in QLM. Do I want to see the risks, or do I want to see this, that, and the other? And then it is part of the diagram. So when you freeze it, approve, then it has those buttons placed in that place forever. Now, we don't think that is very flexible because different people want to see different ways of highlighting on top of your diagram. Now, you may want to see the life cycle, but if you have all these colored quadrants in your face every time you open it, and you don't know what the colors mean, then it's more white noise than it's actually a model, right? So we want to make sure that when we freeze a diagram, we freeze the model, but we don't freeze the highlighting layers. So you can basically switch on and off highlights in the viewing phase without affecting the actual model. So that's something that we're working on right now. The way we're going to do that is to, instead of building, this is an SVG file that we show that is published out of QLM. What we want to do is take the web modeler and basically visualize it in the web modeler and then put layers on top of that. So it's a read-only version. It will probably look exactly like this. You probably won't even notice this difference, except that you will have some of these highlighting buttons that you saw just briefly on the new user interface there, to switch on and off things that you want to show. You know, which if you have a transformation project, this transformation project, what systems does it affect, and then it will highlight those, or other types of analysis. So of course that means that we're moving away, as we also talked about last time. We're moving away from QLM. It's going to be replaced with a full web solution, even in the configuration layer. So eventually you will not have QLM. Just so that you know it, if you have built a lot of stuff in QCL, you may actually want to set off some time to convert that into JavaScript, for example, even though that we're implementing a JavaScript API that looks a lot like QLM, so we're going to make it easy for you. It's probably going to be a different environment. So when we move all that to the web, we get more information, more features available in the web modeler, and moving away from QLM. We've had, to be honest, some challenges with the two environments. We thought we could release a web modeler as part of the Plus release, so for simple modeling for those who are not architects, but we ended up getting a lot of support on people who modified stuff on the web in the web modeler and then expect the QLM diagram to look exactly the same way. And that was not our intention from the beginning, and we should have thought of that, of course. So now it's pretty much the same thing, but the web modeler is moving ahead now. So whereas it has been sort of QualiWare Lifecycle Manager with more functionality than the web modeler, this may actually change in the near future, and we don't want to run into the same problems again, people working in the web modeler and somebody touching it in QLM and messing up everything. For those of you who are really into the details, you'll know that we already solved that problem for the text editor, for example. There's a lot more features in the text editor on the web, and if you modeled or change your content of a description from the web, then you're not able to, unless you specifically ask to override it, you're not able to do text editing in that field in QLM. So and that's the same approach we're going to use for the sort of two different environments. It's a crossover type of decision. Eventually you'll be working full web.
I have a question.
Just real quick, just to finalize that overlay that you talked about is not going to be in 10.6 yet then, the next release?
Well, let me put it this way. This is SVG. You can build any overlay you want to even in 10.6, but out of the box, we are not going to introduce it in 10.6, no.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I have two questions. Thank you for your info. The first one is, when do you think that we're going to be full web and that QLM will no longer be available?
Well, that's actually two questions, because you know, when are we going to be full web? Now with the accuracy on release plans that you're familiar with from QualiWare, I can say with extreme uncertainty that we hope that we will have something ready by the end of this year or the beginning of next year that does not require QLM. That does not mean though that you're not able to run QLM. It's just not required. And frankly,
yeah,
it's gonna make it much easier and cheaper for those of you who are running this in the cloud.
okay.
Because right now we need specific services set up to run the Windows environment QLM in the cloud, and that's no longer going to be necessary.
Well, there's been some departments, like I'll give you an example at SSC, they've customized all of their templates. So, and I think there are challenges right now to bring these templates into the web or to model those kinds of templates. It's challenging right now. So there's going to be some conversion that will be required. And the other thing is, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I think that it should not be, we're using the same technology as you are right now. I'm doing the meta models in QLM and putting them into the web for production. So there should not be any challenges in that. It should be a dual representation of the meta model. There may be some of the label functions written in QCL that, of course, will not execute on the web. So if you have, data or text that you want to appear in the symbols, you need to redo those when you want to use them in the web modeler.
Okay.
But other than that, it should work already now.
All right. Now, the other thing I would like to know, is there a place that we know that we can go to see what are the templates that are currently available on the web? I know that the business diagram is, but is there a place you can maybe give us? I think on your website, perhaps, there could be a place where we know which templates.
So when we open you don't mean this sort of view on all the different templates? Is that what you mean, or?
Well, what I mean is some templates you can design in the web and others you're unable to right now because they're not all available. So I would like to have a list of the ones that are available that we can start using in the web.
Yeah, I understand. And I actually thought we had put that in, or I'm pretty sure they were in the release notes. We are actually going to open up for a lot of all the diagrams in 10.6, by the way. So
okay.
Yeah, so
in 10.5 we're looking at how many abouts are there? 50 or so?
Yeah, I would say at least if we no, I don't have that list here. I think, hang on, where can I find that? Now don't change this because you can't actually. But here is a list of all those. Let me see where it is. There you go.
All right.
So
are you able to copy this in the chat so that I can just pick it up from there? Because
this isn't
going to be more convenient.
Yeah, and this isn't the 10.6. I want to test this before I give it to you because this is what is open on my diagram, on my version right now. Yeah, I think Kevin, maybe you know that is it not in the release notes? Yeah, I don't think we changed that actually in 10.5, so it's probably in the 10.4.2 release notes. I think there is a list. I'm pretty sure there is a list on all the open. You can see here, but ontology.ovl, that's a new one. Whereas environmental impact diagram, regulation diagrams, stuff like that is not new. So this is just my extra stuff here. But pretty much all of them, I would say. There's still a few where we have challenges with the not with the web modeler as such, but there's a lot of functionality we need to move over especially for data modeling and these sort of heavy type of diagrams that has rules embedded in them. So you draw for foreign one-to-many relationship, it creates your foreign key automatically, and it asks you if you want to create it or reuse some of the fields and so on. So that whole wizard type of thing has not been developed fully yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. That answers my question.
Sure. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kuno. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.